Good morning. Today is Tuesday, February 4th at 9:05 a.m., calling this meeting to order. I'm going to start by introducing our board members. To my far left, Board Member Didi Diadamo. To her right, Vice Chair Fran Spivey-Weber. To my right, Board Member Tam Dodak. And to her right, Board Member Stephen Moore. Mr. Howard, will you introduce the staff that are assisting us today?
Assisting the board today is Janine Townsend, and to my left is Chief Counsel Michael Laufer, and to my right, Chief Deputies John Bishop and Karen Turgovich.
Terrific. For those of you who haven't been with us before, I'm going to go through the emergency evacuation procedure. For those of you who have been with us, you know. If you hear a sound that sounds like an emergency sound, it probably is. Look for the exit nearest you, leave. Our gathering point is out in Cesar Chavez Park. If you go there, you'll know when to come back. Staff will need to assemble there so they know when to come back, but the rest of you obviously are free to do whatever you would like. Please be careful as you do so. Also, this meeting is being webcast and recorded, and you can see the difference. The point I'm about to make, and that board member Dodak has to help me with all the time. When you're speaking at the microphone, it's important to make sure the green light is on, but also to get closer to it than you might otherwise like to, so that the webcast and the people in the back of the room can hear what you have to say. And then finally, just out of courtesy for us all, particularly those people on the webcast, if you have any devices that make noise, put it on stun so that it doesn't disturb the proceedings. Next, it's my great pleasure to swear in board member Didi Diadamo, who was recently confirmed to her first part of filling out the last term, but was just reappointed as well for another term by the governor, and so she needs to be sworn in. Did you want to come over here? Hopefully this will be close enough, because I'm not going to lean over and do this.
I shall assist.
Yeah, there we go. See, it's a team. We're a team here. And this is the oath of office for members of the State Water Board, and Didi will need to follow after me. I, Doreen Didi Diadamo, do solemnly swear
I, Doreen Didi Diadamo, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I will bear true allegiance and faith to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, and yay. I could make a mistake. Okay. Great. Oh, thank you. Great. With that, we're now on to the public forum, and the board will hear from any person wishing to speak about any matter that is not pending before the board. I have no cards. No cards, all right. Next, we'll entertain the minutes from the January 21st to 22nd board meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay,
Just
all-
sorry, just a quick request.
Go ahead.
Under the public forum, commenters, the last commenter is Rochelle Becker, and in her comment, you just put same, And I understand that's to be the same as John Giesman, but there is another public commenter during the public forum. So just to clarify, yes, just say same as Mr. John Giesman or something like that.
Smart. Thank you for that catch. Now, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay. Minutes are carried. Now it's time for board member report. I'll start over here this time. I know, I always go left first.
No, you've been good about rotating.
I'm trying.
Okay, thank you, Board Chair Marcus. On January 23rd, along with Region 2's Board Chair Terry Young and Executive Officer Bruce Wolf, as well as the Refuge Manager at the San Francisco Bay Wildlife Refuge, we toured the South San Francisco Bay Salt Pond Restoration in San Jose and the Bear Island Restoration in Redwood City. We observed hundreds of acres of recently restored tidal salt marsh that will provide multiple benefits of flood protection from sea level rise, endangered species habitat, increased food web productivity, and water quality improvement. On January 29th, I attended and spoke at a dedication ceremony in Santa Barbara, along with Mayor Helene Schneider and other city leaders, for a stormwater infiltration project at 4 of the city's parks using permeable pavement as a low-impact development technique. The city appears to love how it looks and function and plans to implement this technique more in its streets and parking lots. This project was funded through our round 1 of the Prop 84 stormwater grants in 2012, so it was great to see something in the ground so soon. And certainly we made the point that projects like this extend water supply through drought periods. On January 30th, I attended the North Coast Regional Board meeting where they handed out an inaugural award. This has been brought up by my fellow board members. I wanted to draw attention to the North Coast Board's Executive Officers Water Quality Stewardship Award. It went to the Gualala Watershed Council for their work promoting restoration and attaining TMDL load allocations for sediment in the Gualala River watershed, including monitoring and road improvements. I would also note that the EO report, the Executive Officer report for the North Coast this month, featured the TMDL report cards for this project in Gualala River, as well as Mattole River sediment, Shasta River temperature, and they worked on those with our state board staff. And it's a nice overview of our attempts to track performance of environmental outcome of our TMDL projects. Finally, on January 30th, I spoke at the Bay Area Clean Water Agency's annual meeting, and they had a morning session on nutrients in the San Francisco Bay ecosystem. I spoke mainly about the governor's proposed drinking water reorganization and how it could help advance the use of recycled water. Thank you.
Great.
I guess I now know who the San Francisco Bay Regional Board's favorite state board member is. Since as their liaison, I was not invited to the Salt Pond tour. But
I believe we have an issue to be resolved.
yes, we
here.
do. I do have one
we did
item.
miss you. We want you to.
One item to report, but before I do, I want to take a moment and congratulate Board Member Moore. All is forgiven, Stephen. He picked up an award last night for one of his engineering projects from his previous life. So congratulations,
Oh,
Stephen.
that's great. That's great. Thank you.
See, I can play nice. The item that I wanted to update my colleagues on is last year, at the same board meeting where our cost of compliance stakeholder groups made their recommendations to us, the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance, through their water quality task force, also came in and submitted their recommendations to us. In follow-up to that, Chair Marcus sent a response letter on all of our behalf, and last week the group met and brought up their recommendation, as well as Chair Marcus's response, to the California Environmental Dialogue, with the hope of initiating a dialogue that would include a broader group of representations, including NGOs, ag, and others. And as a result of that discussion, they would like to focus on the issue of stormwater and managing stormwater as a resource that would achieve multi-benefits, both in terms of water quality as well as long-term water supply sustainability. So they formed a work group that they would like to be as broad-based as possible. They would like to have a discussion in order to hopefully have some consensus reached that could then be submitted to staff when staff is ready to work on the stormwater strategic work plan. I'm discussing with Michael what the appropriate level of engagement is for me, but I think it's a very positive step, especially if we can engage some of the NGOs in the discussion.
I think that's terrific, and I have an idea here, which is maybe you can invite Board Member Moore to come along with you sometimes, because this is his favorite topic, if he makes sure he invites you along to all of his field trips.
Yes, especially in the regions that I'm liaison to.
It's a deal.
Whichever one.
Okay, so I'll report for myself and Board Member Doduk because you didn't include the South Delta tour, so I'll just mention that.
I knew you would.
Okay. So,
See, Dee Dee shares her tours with me.
so Tam and I, along with staff, visited with John Herrick last week, with the South Delta tour, which we had to reschedule from, I think it was December, on the only day that it was storming in December. So I was kind of hoping that we'd hit another storm event that day, but it was a beautiful day, lots to learn, even though I've been out there quite a bit. It's always good to meet with John and hear his concerns about current operations of the project. The one thing that I was a little disappointed in, there's a lower San Joaquin River flood control project that I guess did not meet the Corps of Engineers cost-effectiveness test. So that project, which was heralded as a solution for South Delta issues, and that was also supported by the county and the city, is without funds. So that was a big disappointment of the day, and I hadn't yet heard that news. Last Friday, I went to a Region 8 board meeting, and the main item on the agenda was a workshop to revise the salt management plan for the Santa Ana region, specifically to incorporate our on-site wastewater treatment system policy, and then also to update and revise nitrogen, TDS assimilative capacity, and wastewater reclamation. So this was really useful for me because I'm trying to get more involved with CV salts, and of course Santa Ana really is a model. And so they're going to the next step, updating their basin plan. And they talked quite a bit about, interestingly, about anti-DEG and how they're just doing what they can to follow the existing policy. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then there was another item. Oh, that's right. And then attended the last of CDFA's stakeholder meetings. This one was in Modesto about a week ago, and it was the best attended of all three sessions, with representatives, growers, and representatives from the grower community. And I see Ms. Delahant here today from Western Growers. She was there in participation as well. Lots of questions. My sense is that people are going to do what they can to just comment on the task force report and move forward.
Seems to have gone quite well.
Over the last couple of weeks, I have attended the Region 7 Colorado River Region Board meeting, and they emphasized at that meeting a report from the Department of Water Resources, a report on integrated regional water management and how it works. The Water Board really had not been hugely involved in, some of the board members have been involved, but but the board as a whole had not been hugely involved in IRWM, and so they asked lots of good questions and are quite interested. There are several IRWMs that overlap their region and are internal to their region, so they have taken quite an interest, which will get expanded. Region 4 had a planning meeting for the day, and they essentially got reports on all of their activities that the staff are doing. Sometimes the big things come in, and contentious things come in front of the board, but the staff do huge amounts of work, as we know so well here. And so it was a chance for them to really, find out what was going on with their staff, and it was very impressive. All of this is to say that the regional boards are one of the great assets of the state of the water board's process, and the chairs meet by phone once a month with me and with Tom Howard and other staff and board members, depending on the topic. They share information about what they do and what are the high priorities for their area. They ask for advice and guidance on things, and then they can be more up to speed as to what's going on at the state level. So I just wanted to make sure that those who are interested in the board process, the chairs do meet on a monthly basis, and then all the board members come together at least once a year, usually in the fall, and it's an opportunity for everybody to get to know each other better. We're working very hard to make sure that the board members and of all stripes, as well as the chairs, are more engaged in what's happening with water boards regionally as well as statewide. So I'm pleased to report that. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. I'll just quickly, for me, it's been all drought all the time. Actually, for all of us, it's been all drought all the time. So the main things I would just flag are the fact of the governor's proclamation of a drought a week ago Friday. I would advise those who haven't taken a look at it to take a look at it. It's posted on our website, Resources, DWR's REB's website. The Clean Water Action Plan was finalized and posted. That may have been lost in the headlines about the drought, so it's up on deck, and I want to thank everyone in the audience listening and just out there that helped comment on that and make it even better. It is a statement of this administration's priorities of what we'll be working on over the next 5 years, both to deal with immediate issues, but also to deal with laying a foundation for what we're going to need to do in the next couple of decades if we're going to be able to really deal with the specter of climate change and what it will do to reducing our snowpack, and as well as other things. So please take a look, hold us to it. And then, of course, last Friday, when Tom Howard, our executive director, and Mark Cowan announced a suite of actions from DWR's point. Mr. Cowan announced zero allocation for the state water project, along with some other efforts. Mr. Howard announced the granting of a temporary urgency change order in response to a petition from DWR and the projects with concurrence by the federal and state fish agencies to adjust the implementation of our water quality standards to deal with the drought. That will be a living document that may change as conditions change, but I wanted to mention it particularly because this board will be holding a workshop on the 18th and 19th on which we will be talking about the urgency change order, as well as curtailment notices that will be going out this week, and our sense of what will happen over the coming weeks. We really want to hold this forum just to get input from folks, and at that time the board can give feedback to Mr. Howard. For his action, he has the authority to take these temporary urgency change orders and make them, but we have the opportunity to give him feedback, as well as the opportunity to decide whether we want to hold a formal hearing later on and to amend the order ourselves. So just a flagging of that. And then finally, well, almost finally, I just want to mention that, I've been doing most of you have, it all depends on how old you are, been doing this water work for decades in a variety of fora, including at the state level around the Delta. And I just wanted to say that I have been very impressed, first within the administration, at the level of collaboration and seriousness of purpose and the desire to not pit one agency against another, one beneficial use against another, one agency against another. It is refreshing and wonderful to be a part of an administration that does that. But I also wanted to say thank you to those of you in the stakeholder world, water users, environmental, you name it, farmers, who have also risen to the occasion to recognize this drought is a time for us to come together and figure this out, not a time for old, reflinging old rhetoric that served us well in the past that will absolutely not serve us well in the future. And it's really been wonderful to see. So I just wanted to express my thanks, because we have some hard times ahead, and we're all going to have to try and use our creativity and our hearts to figure it out, as well as our heads. And then in that vein, I just did 2 speaking engagements. One was at a symposium between Australia and the U.S. At UCLA, where I, in 15 minutes, laid out Western water in the U.S., which only someone who talks as fast as me can do. But most importantly, it was very instructive to see what the Australians went through, because in many ways they looked at the 3rd year of a drought and hoped it would rain. And then they realized it might not rain. And they took some action, but it didn't rain for 12 years. So they really are an instructive model of some of the things you can do. They have dug up, in some cities in Melbourne, dug up whole swaths of public land and created cisterns so they can keep some playing fields and things from water directly underneath. It goes, they're redesigning their cities to become more self-reliant, and I do think there's something instructive there. We're on that path, but they are a good case study in how to accelerate it. And then I also spoke with Gary Bardini from the Department of Water Resources at a high-tech business conference of folks who are engaged in LA Life called Verde Exchange, to educate them about the nature of California water, the hydrologic cycle, the need for storage, the need for all of these things, the all of the above strategy, as opposed to just picking your favorite water tool. And that was great to be able to do, and I know all of my colleagues have been doing that everywhere they can. Okay, so with no further ado, I'm going to move into the items for today. As a flag, I am going to do some sort of a mid-morning break. I have no way of knowing how long it's going to take today. You can't tell by the number of people in the audience. And so out of courtesy and my kinder, gentler approach to this, at some point mid-morning between 10 and 10:30, we will take a 15-minute break. If we end up going up till noon, we will take a lunch break today. My apologies to people later on the agenda, but there are meetings that some folks have scheduled that need to take place, so I'll probably take the full hour lunch break, and then we will come back. So also for those who are listening, sort of just watch where we seem to be in the 11:30 time frame. We have 2 items on the uncontested agenda, items 3 and 4. Item 4, we have had some requests to take off the uncontested and postpone. What I'm going to do is take it and put it on the uncontested for today so that we can discuss it fully. On the other hand, we have no cards yet for item number 7, which is our last item of the day. And so I'd like to ask if anybody in the audience or on the dais has an objection to putting that on the uncontested calendar.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, you're moving item 4 off consent?
Off consent to discussion.
With that, then, I will agree and move items 3 and 7. Right?
Right. Just looking in the audience to make sure there's nobody thinking about. Okay. All right. Do I have a second? Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay. Those 2 are carried. So let's move on to item 4.
Mr. Sawyer.
Item 4 is consideration of a proposed resolution to amend and add funds to an existing contract between the State Water Board and ICF to work on Bay Delta Plan update. Just a quick comment on that. That we've gotten several letters, and the general thrust of the letters seems to be that they believe it's not realistic that ICF would develop or support information or standards for the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan that would somehow lessen the likelihood of approval of BDCP. With respect to the issue of developing standards, I'd like to let the board know that the standards were developed, or the proposed standards that we're looking at, were developed by your staff in consultation with Karen and me long before we hired ICF. You know, there hasn't been any change in the general thrust of the approach after we hired ICF. Of course, we are not asking ICF to comment on our standard proposals. We're asking them to develop information on issues like hydropower and ag impacts on those proposals. You know, that type of information is then critically reviewed by your staff, and it's going to receive an incredible amount of scrutiny from the general public. You know, the idea that somehow ICF is going to obfuscate regarding, you know, that information just strikes me as an extraordinary allegation. The other thing I'd like to point out to you is that, you know, the board has in the past expressed to me that they want to move forward somewhat expeditiously with these projects, and to change in midstream at this point would be a huge setback with respect to the timing. I would imagine somewhere in the area of 1 to 2 years, something along that line. So anyway, there's staff here who are prepared to discuss the issue in more detail, and I will. Larry Lindsay and Aaron Mahaney and thanks.
Well, with the words of Executive Director Howard, there's not much I can add. I just want to say staff is asking the board to approve this resolution, which will add the authority to commit an additional $500,000 to the project, bringing up the total authority to $3 million. And again, I emphasize this is not the step that actually spends the money. This is the gives us the ability to. Currently, the contract has $1.9 million against it. We have an amendment up at DAS right now to add about another $465,000 to it. So the money, the block we're asking for of authority will likely have next fiscal year's money allocated for it. We don't think we'll need all of that $500,000. I'm estimating right now about 120 or so, but we're working with ICF right now to finalize that. But this gives us plenty of room by taking on a block of $500,000. And again, if there are any questions, we did have one on-time comment letter, and that was the one from John Herrick of South Delta Water Agency. So unless there are any other questions, we're asking for approval.
Sorry, Aaron, can you never follow my example on microphone issues? I just want you to know. Can you speak to the allegation of conflict or appearance of conflict
Absolutely.
that we've seen in the letter?
As you all know, this is a quasi-legislative, it's a rulemaking proceeding to which the due process requirements that are applicable to adjudicative proceedings under the Administrative Procedures Act do not apply. Nonetheless, of course, the board, I'm sure, is sensitive to the allegations of any potential conflicts, but as Mr. Howard pointed out in his comments, there's no factual basis for such a conflict. The board and its staff put forth the objectives before it even hired ICF, and to date, and even if that time frame was different, to date there's no information supporting any allegation that ICF is somehow directing the board staff in the formulation of the objectives. And I'd like to remind the board that ICF is working on this contract in the capacity of providing technical and environmental analysis associated with the SED. They, under CEQA, it is allowed to hire a consultant to prepare an environmental document as long as the lead agency, in this case the board, exercises its independent judgment in reviewing and adopting that document. Now, even beyond the CEQA concerns, because this is an SED that addresses issues broader than CEQA, this document does and will reflect the board's independent judgment. ICF is not directing the analysis. That analysis is being directed by the board through its staff. Actually, I would like to add one more thing in response to one of the late comment letters. And there seemed to be, and this is a letter from CalSPA, which seems to suggest that ICF may be used by the board in processing the change petition that would be submitted by the Department of Water Resources in association with BDCP. But again, this contract is solely for the preparation of the SED. It is not a contract for any services to support the board in the board's consideration of the change petition in an adjudicative proceeding.
All right. And so do I take from that and what was said before, to the extent that we do hire anyone to help us with the change petition, it would not be ICF?
I would not go so far as that. I think it would be an issue that would need to be evaluated closely to the extent that there are people who are working on the same issues on both sides. Whether that completely means that ICF would be eliminated completely, I don't know. It's possible a firewall or something like that could be considered. But those are facts that aren't before us now. As far as I know, the board is not considering hiring ICF or any other environmental consultant to help assist with the change petition. I'm not saying that wouldn't happen down the road, but right now before the board is solely a contract for environmental documentation associated with the Bay Delta Plan update, a rulemaking proceeding.
Questions? All right, I do have 2 speaker cards on this, so let's go to those and then see if we have questions. First is Tim O'Laughlin from the San Joaquin Tributary Authority. Haven't seen you in a while, Tim. Nice to see you.
Button going on? It's on? Okay.
Oh. They let you take a vacation? How could that be?
I did. Thank you.
I'm impressed.
always
That's
on
very,
vacation.
it's very healthy.
Rested, refreshed,
Well, for
ready
him,
for
work
an
is a
interesting
vacation. Is
year
that
of
what you're saying?
spending my time with you.
That's right.
Good morning. Happy New Year. I haven't seen any of you or talked to you for several months. Actually, I didn't know whether to go under public comment, under public forum, or under this one, so this is kind of going to be a grab-all of SED and comments. I'm not really too concerned about ICF, and I'm not too concerned that you're allocating $500,000 to spend on ICF. But what I am concerned about, or maybe would offer to the board, some of you have been in the water business for quite some time. Some of you have been through the 87 through 92 drought. Some of you who've lived in the state long enough have gone through the 76, 77 drought. And now you're in a position on this board where you're going to be dealing with the drought this year. And hopefully, and unfortunately, I think it's a learning moment and a teaching moment. I don't know about you, but when I read documents sometimes, they don't give you the full flavor of what you see. So when you see in an SED document that there's a 30% or 40% reductions in waters to farms, water reductions in reservoirs, rivers going dry, reservoirs going dry, it's kind of bland because it's just, black and white and it's on paper and you don't get the impact. And I think in the coming year, what I would ask you to do is to take this time, and I know it's difficult because you're going to be faced with the drought and a wide variety of major decisions are going to be coming before you, but go out in the field and look at how this drought is impacting people on the ground and what it means. And I'm not saying that you're going to change where you're going with your SED, but I think it's a what I would call like a pregnant pause, like from a checkoff play, where you're basically can take a step back and say, what does this mean? What does this look like when we talk about these things? And then reevaluate if that's really in the direction that this board wants to go, or maybe you want to change your SED. So I'm not concerned about the allocation of resources. I think the money's well spent. You need to do your environmental documentation. And I think one of the things we're learning from this is that whether you're into climate change or not into climate change, but if droughts do become longer, if droughts do become more severe, what is a sustainable, viable water quality control plan look like? And that, I think, is what this drought is kind of bringing home on our side of the aisle. So I would just ask you that. Now, having said that, I have some questions. So I know the board is being overrun with drought issues. You have a temporary urgency petition. You're going to be having meetings on that. My expectation is the United States Bureau of Reclamation will be in here shortly on D1641, San Joaquin River flow, and salinity objectives for a change petition on those as well. So that'll be coming shortly to you. So given that, previously we had heard that the SED was going to be out on the street March time frame, and I was just wondering if you would ask your staff to kind of give us an update on what an expected time frame might look like for the SED. I don't need it right now, but moving forward, when we might be able to see one in the future. And then I don't have any other further comments or questions for you.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
You have a question for him? Can I thank him first?
You may.
Okay. Well, just thank you for that point. You're right, and the language of documents is frequently somewhat dry and technical. And I know it's not just the words you're talking about; it's the understanding what impacts are. And it is a sad opportunity to see what the actual impacts are for people, but also for fish and wildlife. I mean, there's a lot of pain to go around in a drought. So I take your suggestion seriously. And as you see, we've been trying to go out in the field as much as we can so that we're bringing that sensibility as part of, I think, our job as a board to bring in that sensitivity, and staff have been going with us. But I appreciate that recommendation, and we will take that very, very seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think seeing, having been through the 87 through 92 drought on the ground and dealing with water agencies and what we went through then, I think what we're in right now, it's people say it's it's historic drought. I don't. When you put it in the context of historic, it really isn't. We've seen this in California over time. But I think what we're going to see this year and going into next year, because we're going to be so depleted this year, hopefully, like the Aussies said, when they got to the third year, they hoped it rained, and it didn't. And we hope that doesn't happen. But next year is going to be a hard year, too.
I have a request back to you.
A request or a question?
No, a request, actually.
Okay.
I met yesterday with someone, with a water agency in your general area on the San Joaquin, and they had come up with a list of, I'm going to say 8 projects that could expand or strengthen their kind of water supply situation. Some of them were they were all different kinds, and they had costed them out. They knew how much water they could possibly get from these. I think now is the time, if you haven't already done it, of all the folks that you work with, to start making those lists as to what can be done at the district level, and so that we're better prepared for stretching water supplies as much as possible. We cannot wait till year 3, and so I was very impressed with this list, and I think if we were getting that kind of information from everyone, it would be very interesting and would be helpful to us as we're making decisions about the SED as well.
Oh, I will take that back. We have a meeting tomorrow, and I will let the managers and general counsels of the districts that I work for know of your request. And do you have a name I can contact that's an example, or do you want to keep that private?
It's TID. It's
okay. Yeah.
on the Tuolumne. It's the TID on the Tuolumne.
Great.
So I too want to thank you for calling out this year in particular, and want to make sure that I just want to make sure that we're modeling these extraordinary years, which I suspect that we are, but successive years, back to back, so much of what's going on right now, folks are saying that's just, you know, historic. I mean, just as an example, the call on Friant that's never happened before. So just want to make sure that we're modeling all these different year types. And I guess this would not as much be, well, I guess it's a question for staff and for Mr. O'Loughlin. These two processes that are going on, the scientific evaluation process and then also preparation of the next round, and then also some in the NGO community met with us, Gary Bobker, and they have, I'm going to just call it a framework approach. Just want to make sure that staff is taking all these different approaches into account so that as you're moving forward in the event that the SEP process gets pretty far along but not quite to the finish line, want to make sure that the work would be or could be incorporated into what staff is looking at. And I guess the same would be said with respect to what the NGO community brought to us.
So yeah, we're definitely looking at the information that we received from the NGOs, which I think was partly formed through the SEP process. And we're also looking at contingencies that we need for severe drought situations. We have, in the draft objectives we released, we had an emergency exemption. We'll revisit that to see if that needs to be strengthened. We're also looking at modeling assumptions that need to be modified during extreme drought circumstances and those types of things. So we are definitely very conscious of this concern and want to make sure that we're capturing it and addressing it in our work on the San Joaquin flows.
If the board chair would indulge me, I know my time's up. Can I respond to the question or statement by board member Didi Dianamano?
Yes, you may, because you made such an important point.
Okay, thank you. A couple quick ones. So this is a real snapshot update. The settlement discussions are ongoing. Actually, my side of the aisle, the water users have been kicked out of the room, and basically the NGOs and the regulatory agencies are trying to come up with a counteroffer to what we've previously proposed. And so they're working very diligently on that. We get a lot of data requests. We're responding to the data requests. But those people are in agencies and entities are in the room and trying to hammer something out that they can send to our side of the aisle. On the biological objectives piece, the SJTA, sorry, I'm going to go back. The SJTA supports biological objectives. We support conservation measures. We support SMART objectives. The document you received, however, was not developed through the SEP process. So I don't want to go into a big pointing fingers type of thing. Not to say that we can't get there, but currently as we are set up in the settlement process is going through and trying to reach a settlement, and as part of that settlement, we are going to develop biological objectives and conservation measures to implement the biological objectives through the SEP process. Okay? We have almost completed step 1, which is the identification of the limiting factors analysis on the Stanislaus River. We hope to get that done this month. You can't go and start talking about biological objectives or conservation measures until you understand what your limiting factors are. So the document you have is a document that some people put together, not saying it's bad, wrong, or indifferent. The general concept or idea of biological objectives and conservation measures we support. It's just not in the way that it was presented.
Okay.
There you go.
No,
Put it
thank
that
you for
way.
letting us know that. That's important for folks to have
Yes.
conversations with you about.
Yes.
Good. Are you prepared to discuss the timing now, or we'll just do it? We can also do it later.
I think we're looking at more like an April timeframe at this point, and we can refine that estimate for you. We're trying to maintain the phase 1 process, but we're also trying to make sure the modeling and everything is right, despite the drought circumstances. We're trying to continue on with that work, so we're trying to stay on track, but given some of the modeling issues we're looking at, there's been a slight delay there.
All right. Well, it's most important to get it as right as you can, seems to me. This is a personality trait difference, I know, in Myers-Briggs, but I'd rather you take the time to get it right.
I want to thank
And be
the board
responsive.
for your time. I know I went over my time.
No,
Thank
that's
you,
okay.
and
Thank you.
good
Those
seeing
are all
you, and
important.
We'll see you in April.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome back. All right, next on item 4, we have Bob Wright from Friends of the River and the Environmental Water Caucus. Hi, Mr. Wright.
Good morning, Chair Marcus and members of the board. Actually, I'm the lawyer for Friends of the River, and I'm also representing the Environmental Water Caucus, a coalition of more than 30 public interest organizations in California this morning. We did get a letter to you yesterday, and I just wanted to say a few things to you on this item 4 and the ICF contract. Their task for the board is to do, in the words of the staff, is the technical environmental analysis and preparation of the SED. These things are being done under our environmental full disclosure laws. The purpose of these things is to find out, disclose, and articulate the bad news, not just the good news. We're in a situation right now where there's an effort going on in Congress to clear out the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, Public Trust Doctrine, everything that could possibly protect our Delta and our Northern California rivers. Why is that? It's because these folks are smart, they have people working on these issues, and they know that these laws present great threats to the water tunnels, which is the preferred alternative of the Department of Water Resources and the exporters in the BDCP. They know that those laws are grave threats. That's why they're trying to clear them out. Now, there have been a number of federal and state experts who've called for increasing inflow into the Delta and increasing outflow for the obvious purposes of protecting the Delta, the water quality, and the fish, including endangered species of fish. Now, ICF has been the lead consultants on the BDCP. They've got the preferred alternative, alternative 4, which is the water tunnel. Now, in the real world, in the private sector, which exists quite properly to do work and get paid for the work, and we have the team player concepts well established, it is simply not realistic that the same consultants who have been on board with the BDCP and have done that work are going to be in position to identify and disclose and articulate facts in their technical environmental work and issues that could lead to the disenabling of the water tunnels being an approvable project. These aren't allegations. This is simply life experience. Businesses exist to make money, and really you just can't have one part of the business shooting down something that the other part of that same business, the same ownership group, has made very substantial sums of money off of. And that's why we have called for and asked for you to find and retain consultants who would be independent, because while we recognize the board maintains its independent authority, what goes in does affect what goes out. And we think that these issues in the Delta and our rivers, the public trust doctrine, are so important that you really need to have people who are independent, who don't have part of the business serving a different master with an already obtained objective to gain approval for the water tunnels, that can focus on the issues, and if they find something that indicates if you update your plan, those standards would, in effect, mean they can't have the water tunnels. That's the information you should get. That's information you're entitled to, and that I think everybody in the state is entitled for you to get from your consultants. I really can't think of anything to add. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Don't laugh at me. What I heard the staff saying is, in this instance, we are paying them, so we are the master, and staff is directing and reviewing everything that comes back. They are just extending our reach on our independent effort and judgment. I said that as briefly as I could, but if you all could restate
I
how
agree,
you
and-
see this, because I can see how a regular person looking at it would have this reaction, and so I do think it's important to be very, very clear on the level of independence, the level of review, et cetera, in this work.
I can guarantee you, in our experience, that myself, Diane Riddle, Mark Gowdy, Les Grober, we are leading this effort, not ICF.
Yeah, I mean, before preparation of any materials, we meet to discuss strategy and we direct the consultants. There's no direction coming from the consultants. It's all coming from us, and all of the analysis is approved by us, reviewed by us, directed by us. So, I mean, the other issue is that the tunnels are sort of a separate issue as to whether they're, whether the board should approve the change in point of diversion or not, and that will come before the board separately. And at this point, we're not anticipating hiring ICF as a consultant to assist with that process. So the setting of the Bay Delta Plan flow and water quality objectives is really a separate matter from consideration of the petitions. Because even if we approve the petitions for changing the point of diversion for the BDCP, that doesn't mean that we have to approve all of the flows and water qualities that are included as part of the preferred project for the BDCP. They're not linked in a way that they couldn't be separated, and we couldn't set different water quality and flow objectives if we determined to approve the objectives. When we approve the change in point of diversion, when we consider that, we'll consider it and determine what terms and conditions should be included in any approval, and those will likely be compatible with the Bay Delta Plan. So I think the perception that there's a real conflict is, you know, a little off base on that issue, given that they're separate processes. We'll make an independent determination on the need for flows and water quality objectives through the Phase 2 process. There will be some link between the BDCP process, but we're not obligated to move forward with all of the components of the preferred project that are included in the BDCP.
And your staff, with their combined years of experience on the ground, would be able to discern whether the factual technical data you get is to your satisfaction.
Right, and we've been working on that already, independent of ICF. That's been entirely a staff-led effort to review the BDCP draft environmental document and provide comments. That's not being done in consultation with ICF at all.
But I mean the data and the technical
Right, and
expertise you're getting on
reviewing
our
that
own
information.
standards.
Also, we anticipate that the consideration of the change petition will require a hearing before the board in which the public will have the opportunity to present evidence and cross-examine and do all of that to determine the veracity of the information that the petitioners provide. So there will be a full process for evaluating this information that extends even beyond the staff, that is a public process that the board will have the opportunity to participate in as well.
And what my question has to do with the work they're doing for you on the SED. So I want assurance that you have the staff experience, technical capacity to review the actual technical data
Yes,
they're
we
doing
do.
to help you.
Yes, we do. We've got a team of scientists and engineers that are reviewing the information. We've got PhD level fish biologists looking at this information, and we're confident that we have the ability to evaluate the information. We're consulting with the fish agencies, EPA. We've also had Delta Interests come in and express their concerns and interests in the project to us. So I think we're in a good position to evaluate, this project independently.
Chair Marcus, can I also mention that much of the analysis that was performed by ICF for Phase 1 of the SED was also subject to peer review, and it will continue to be subject to peer review as we move forward into Phase 2.
Well, thank you. That's actually very helpful. All right. I'll just note that we also had in the in some of the letters, I think maybe all of the letters, there was a request that we bounce this to our next hearing because of people's schedules. I'm glad, Mr. Wright, that you were able to come. That's like a month from now, and I'm concerned that waiting a month is a problem because we're trying to get this work done as fast as we can. And so I wanted to mention that because it's come up in the letters, but I would well, I'll see what the board's preference is about moving today. We have a lot of work to do, so I'm interested in whether the board is satisfied or not about what they've heard today. So I'll entertain comments or a motion.
I'm actually comfortable, but I do have one more question for Ms. Turkovich. So the peer review, could you talk a little bit about that and how the peer review fits in with the role of the Delta Science program? Just as maybe another added protection.
So I'll address that in two parts. First, the peer review. So the board has a fairly formalized process through the University of California, Berkeley for peer review services. So there is a process that's established, and you can access that process on our website. Information on the process, including all the peer reviews, the peer reviewers, the comments received from the peer reviewers, as well as our responses to those comments, are all posted on our website for all peer reviews, whether they're conducted under the Water Rights Program or the Water Quality Programs. So that process identifies independent experts to review some or all portions of the scientific documents that we put out that are the basis for our rulemaking. There's a requirement that generally affects water board programs that the science behind our rulemaking must be subject to independent scientific peer review. So that process is pretty formalized and exists and is available for anyone to look at on our website. Relative to the Delta Science program, they have been in conversations with us because as they are developing their science plan that they are now rolling out, an element of that science plan is peer review. And they've been discussing with us how we can complement each other's peer review processes and potentially even integrate them. So I cannot give you a direct answer in terms of how they will relate together going forward, but we are discussing that with them. I think that in general, the formalized process that we have is perhaps it provides a greater sense of independence than I think the process that the Delta Science program is envisioning, in that they're looking at the world of the scientific community within the Delta framework to become peer reviewers as they move forward. Whereas through UC Berkeley, they're looking for an absolute independence of experts where they have no tie to the Delta work that's going on. So I would say it even offers an added level of independence.
Thank you. That was interesting. What's
Just
the pleasure?
with a question to staff. Could you comment on, I mean, irrespective of potential conflict that's alleged, have there been some efficiencies in terms of working with a consulting team that's doing a lot of work that's iterative and like with the modeling, and that it's been some efficiency in actually having a consultant that's familiar with other related technical processes, and your general opinion of the consultant's work?
Yeah, that's certainly true. We believe there's a lot of efficiency in the fact that the staff that are working on our review of the Bay Delta Plan are very familiar with Delta issues, Delta modeling, Delta fisheries issues, Delta water quality issues. So there's not the same learning curve that you may get with another consulting firm, and that is the large part of the reason that we selected the firm. We selected the firm before they they became consultants for the BDCP, even though the BDCP contract was executed a month before ours. We had went through the selection process quite a while before that and selected them as the preferred consultants at that time, not knowing that they were working on BDCP, but just given their previous expertise on Bay Delta related issues and their breadth of knowledge related to the subjects that we need to look at during our review.
And the second part was whether you were happy with their work.
Yes, and we've been pleased with their work so far. And again, we're directing the majority of it. The impact, even the impacts assessments, though, you know, the objectives development we're doing entirely in-house. That's not being done through ICF at all. That's entirely a staff-led effort. And the impacts analysis, we're directing the effort. We meet before any writing is conducted, and we direct that effort throughout the process, meet with the consultants on a regular basis. It's a day-to-day interaction with the consultants on the different resource areas to direct them on, you know, on how to conduct the analyses. And, you know, it's a back and forth process, but we're definitely leading that process.
Let me just clarify something Diane said on the timing there of the contracts. Our contract with ICF became effective in May of 2011. BDCP became a sub, or ICF became a sub under BDCP a month before that, but they became a prime contractor a year after us.
But we had gone through the RFQ process a long time prior to that and selected them without the knowledge that they would be a consultant for BDCP, and that wasn't a consideration in the process. And we felt so far that they've maintained a separation between the two, the work on the two processes, and that there hasn't been any conflict to date.
Okay. Go ahead. Other questions? Important that we feel comfortable. All right, do I have a motion? One way or the other?
I'll move adoption of the resolution.
I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll just have to stay in touch carefully. Thank you, Mr. Wright, appreciate you coming.
Thank you,
to-
Chair Marcus and board members. Thank you very much.
All right. Interesting. All right, next item. Item number 5.
Item number
There were 2
5
Central Coast issues.
is another TMDL from the Central Coast region for nitrogen compounds and phosphates in the Lower Salinas River and Reclamation Canal Basin and the Moro Coho Slough subwatershed.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Marcus and members of the board. My name is Christopher Rose. I'm the TMDL Program Manager in the Central Coast region. And to my right is Peter Osmolowski, the staff person who developed the TMDL for which you are considering today or this morning in this particular item. Mr. Osmolowski has prepared a presentation if you'd like to see that, or if you would rather just launch into dialogue, we can do that as well. Whatever your preference is.
I'd actually like to see the presentation. You can go quickly, but that would
Very
be
good.
There's something about sitting in a hearing room all day and getting to see pictures of the real world that the real world is nice to see in a hearing room.
Wonderful.
So thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll pass the microphone off to Mr. Osmolowski then.
And wait, do you want to introduce your other?
Yes, thank you.